to tell you everything.
I know Brother Love's not the only one involved in this.
We often see pastors as symbols of kindness and devotion to God. But what happens when the person we believe to be a man of faith turns out to be a servant of the devil? More than a decade ago, Randy Stone, a loving husband, father, and well-respected member of the community, was found shot to death in his office. His desk was covered with notes for church activities and financial accounts of the church, reflecting how he devoted his life to it. The police quickly ruled it a homicide, and as the town gathered to mourn Randy, no one suspected the truth was lurking so close. Soon, whispers began to surface, secrets that pointed to someone no one would have ever imagined. What could have led to such a shocking turn of events? Let's dive into this and uncover the shocking truth behind the murder of Randy Stone. To get started, let's get to know Randy and his wife Teresa a little better. Randy and Teresa had known each other since childhood, but lost touch when Randy enlisted in the Marines at the age of 18. After serving his country, he returned home to Kansas City, Missouri in the spring of 1990, and he had only one person on his mind, Teresa. They connected that March and quickly fell in love, marrying by October of the same year. Their family blossomed soon after, with the arrival of their son Michael a year later, followed by their daughter Miranda 2 years after that. And life in Independence, Missouri seemed picture perfect for the Stones as they became active members of the New Hope Baptist Church, embraced by their community. Now, Randy owned a small insurance company and served as the church's minister of records, managing finances and ensuring everything ran smoothly. Teresa, a talented singer, performed in the choir and volunteered her time whenever possible, supporting various church activities. Through their many church events, the Stones developed a close friendship with the new pastor, David Love, who was only 38 at the time. He and his wife Kim had 3 children, creating a warm and family-friendly atmosphere at the church. At this point, everything seemed to be going smoothly, with everyone supporting one another. After about 14 years of marriage, Teresa devoted herself to being a loving stay-at-home mom, always actively involved in her children's lives. She also helped Randy at the insurance office, playing a vital role in the family business. Randy was well-liked in town, and together, the Stones were cherished members of their community, known for their kindness and dedication. And the love only intensified when in 2004, Teresa announced that their family was growing again. She was pregnant. With Michael and Miranda approaching their teenage years, the news came as a surprising twist. However, there was a bit of controversy surrounding this joyful announcement. Randy had undergone a vasectomy years earlier, so he believed they wouldn't be having more children. Despite his doubts, Randy remained loyal to Teresa and accepted the news, convinced that the baby was indeed his. Sadly, their happiness was short-lived when Teresa experienced a miscarriage. In the aftermath, she struggled emotionally and sought support from her church, specifically turning to Pastor David Love for comfort and guidance. Their counseling sessions increased, meeting 2 to 3 times a week without fail. Meanwhile, Teresa began to withdraw from Randy, distancing herself from her husband. Randy attributed her behavior to mourning the loss of her child and tried to be understanding. He also sought guidance from Pastor Love, and the two began meeting every morning to discuss everything from life's challenges to its joys. Randy had always looked up to Pastor Love. In fact, he wrote in a self-help book that David Love was one of the most influential people in his life, an advisor and a close friend. However, in early 2010, things began to change between Randy and the pastor. While fulfilling his role as the minister of records and being part of the church's finance committee, Randy uncovered a troubling issue with the church's finances. As he reviewed the church's accounts, he noticed that some funds were missing. To make matters worse, checks for the missing money had Pastor Love's signature on them. This discovery shocked Randy and made him question everything he thought he knew about his friend. On March 17, 2010, Randy decided to confront the situation head-on. He sent Pastor Love an email expressing his concerns, stating that he didn't agree with how the pastor was handling the church's finances. In response, Pastor Love refused to admit any wrongdoing, which only fueled Randy's frustration. Feeling betrayed and uneasy, Randy made a difficult decision. He resigned from his position at the church. Although he didn't pursue the allegation any further, he did inform Pastor Love that he would be removing his family from the congregation. 2 weeks later, on March 31, 2010, Teresa arrived at the insurance office and was met with a horrifying scene. Her husband, Randy, was lying on the floor behind his desk, unresponsive and surrounded by blood. Panicking, Teresa called 911, telling the operator that there was blood coming from Randy's ear, suggesting that it might have been an accident. Perhaps he had fallen. However, when the police arrived, they quickly reached a different conclusion. Randy Stone had been shot, and sadly, he did not survive. Investigators noted that there were no signs of a struggle in the office, and cash remained untouched on his desk. This led them to believe it was not a robbery, but rather a homicide. The gunshot wound was at point-blank range, and they found a spent casing from a .40 caliber pistol nearby. They also discovered that the gun used in the crime was Randy's own firearm, typically kept locked away and accessible only to him. But there was one more shocking clue. In the trash bin next to Teresa's desk, investigators found torn pieces of paper that they were able to piece together into a note. Or rather, a love letter. It was addressed to Teresa and started with, "Happy birthday, love." The message continued with a sentiment about not being in control yet, but promising that when they were fully together, her birthdays would always be special. The note was unsigned, suggesting that the author would be someone familiar to Teresa. However, the police quickly determined that Randy Stone was not the writer. A pad of paper on his desk showed a series of reminders written in his handwriting, which did not match the handwriting on the love letter. This left investigators wondering, who was Teresa's secret admirer, and could this person be linked to Randy's murder? The police suspected that the murderer was someone close to Randy, making it a targeted attack rather than a random act of violence. To gather more information, they decided to attend Randy's funeral, equipped with audio recording devices. They believed that the killer might be present among the mourners, and conversations, comments, or behaviors at the service could potentially lead them to the crucial evidence. Indeed, attending the funeral was a wise decision for the investigators. Pastor Love delivered a heartfelt eulogy, capturing the pain and confusion surrounding Randy's unexpected death. He addressed the mourners' grief, saying, "We sit here today and weep, not just because we are separated from our loved one, but because of all the questions that death brings. Questions like, why? Why him? Why now? Without answers, death seems so cold. We see the body here surrounded by flowers and we think, we expected him to grow old. We thought we would share many moments together. How can we reconcile our anticipation with death being swallowed up in victory?" While the Stone family and the church community continued to grieve, the police were hard at work on the investigation, starting with Teresa Stone. Her behavior immediately raised suspicions. Instead of showing the usual signs of grief, Teresa seemed strangely composed, almost too calm, even happy during her questioning. And it wasn't just her odd demeanor that caught the detectives' attention. Teresa gave them a rock-solid alibi for the time of Randy's murder. She recalled her every move down to the exact minute and had receipts to back up her story. This level of detail felt off. Typically, someone in shock or grief wouldn't remember the smallest things they did before discovering their spouse's body. The fact that Teresa could recall everything so clearly only made her seem more suspicious. The detectives then asked about the mysterious love letter. When detectives brought it up, Teresa seemed almost flustered. "Oh, that birthday note? I totally forgot about it until yesterday," she explained. "It was just torn up. It was left on my car door by someone I don't even know. I never received another note from him." She insisted that she had nothing to hide. Detectives pressed further, asking if there had been any recent trouble in her marriage. Teresa mentioned a brief issue with Randy's struggle with pornography, but insisted that they had worked through it and described their nearly 20-year marriage as joyful and strong. At that point, there was no direct evidence linking Teresa to Randy's death, only her strange behavior and a series of unanswered questions. Yet the detectives were certain there was more beneath the surface, and they weren't ready to give up until they uncovered the full truth. This case became even more troubling when a friend of Randy's, Robert Davis, revealed that Teresa had come to him the very night of her husband's death. What was most shocking was her calm demeanor. She seemed completely unfazed by the tragedy. Instead, her focus was on something entirely different: how to collect on Randy's life insurance policy. Robert found it strange, especially since it hadn't even been 24 hours since Randy's murder. What made things even more suspicious was the fact that Randy, who worked in the insurance business, had 2 life insurance policies totaling $800,000. Could this have been the motive for murder? Detectives soon uncovered that Randy had made a significant change to those policies. He had removed Teresa as the beneficiary and listed their children instead. To their knowledge, Teresa had no idea this change had been made. As they dug deeper, the police began hearing whispers of a disturbing rumor circulating within the New Hope Baptist Church. Apparently, Teresa and Pastor David Love were having an affair. It wasn't just gossip, it was the church's worst-kept secret. David Love, who arrived at the crime scene soon after the authorities, was a close friend of the Stone family. Naturally, he was questioned by the police. However, when the conversation began to heat up, Pastor Love requested an attorney, cutting the discussion short. But the detectives were far from done with him. A search of Pastor Love's computer uncovered shocking evidence, intimate emails, and photos exchanged between him and Teresa. There were also plans for a future together, engagement rings, wedding arrangements disguised as plans for Teresa's daughter. One particular message from Pastor Love stood out. "I long for the touch of your hand as you walk by and the twinkle in your pretty blue eyes as you smile at me. You are my doll," he wrote. The affair had been clearly going on for years. The couple even drew parallels to the biblical story of King David, who arranged for the death of Bathsheba's husband so he could marry her. Pastor Love told Teresa that despite King David's actions, God still blessed their union. Teresa responded by saying, "If God wants us to be together, He will make it happen." By the time that Teresa sat down with detectives for another round of questioning, they had uncovered 10 years of correspondence between her and Pastor Love. Both admitted to having a long-standing affair, but this only raised more questions. Was the affair connected to Randy's murder? And just how far were they willing to go to be together? The detectives were closing in, and the truth was inching closer. As the police delved deeper into the case, they sifted through thousands of personal phone records, determined to uncover any hidden communications. Interestingly, prepaid cell phones that Teresa Stone and Pastor David Love had used to keep their affair under wraps. These phones might have gone unnoticed if it weren't for their occasional slip-ups, where they made calls to their regular phone lines. But the phone records revealed more than just sweet messages and wedding dreams. On the morning of Randy Stone's murder, investigators noticed that David Love's phone had pinged off a tower just a few miles from Randy's insurance office. This raised immediate alarm bells. Then there was the ominous text Teresa received that read, "Urgent, do not go to the office by yourself." Despite the warning, Teresa went to the office anyway, where she made the gruesome discovery of her husband's lifeless body on the floor. Investigators confronted Teresa with the phone data, as well as the torn love letter they found in the trash. At first, she stuck to her story, claiming the prepaid phones were only used to keep her counseling sessions with David a secret. She said his wife Kim had always been uneasy about how much attention David gave her over the years. By this point, detectives had far too much evidence to let Teresa's flimsy excuses slide. They pushed her harder, laying out the facts that pointed to a premeditated murder. Teresa tried to deny it all, insisting that the phones, the messages, and even the affair had nothing to do with Randy's death. When the investigators continued pressing her, Teresa started to crack. The weight of her lies became too much. She finally admitted to the affair, but maintained that David Love was innocent and had nothing to do with Randy's murder. Yet her confession didn't stop there. In a stunning twist, Teresa revealed another secret. She had become pregnant with David's child during their illicit relationship. She told the police that she had wanted to end her decade-long affair with Pastor David Love for some time, but had been too afraid to do so. She even confided in family and friends that she let Pastor Love give the eulogy at her husband Randy's funeral out of fear of how he might react if she refused.
I told him to leave me alone. He wouldn't stop texting me or calling me.
But the investigators had more pressing questions. David had sent a warning text to Teresa on the morning of the murder, telling her not to go to the office alone. Yet the moment she discovered Randy's body, her first call wasn't to 911. It was to her mother. Oddly, Teresa was very clear about what had happened. She told her mother that Randy had been shot, despite the police not knowing that detail yet.
Say it.
Brother Love.
Brother Love.
This inconsistency made the detectives question her even further. "How did you know Randy had been shot?" they asked. Teresa hesitated before breaking down, finally confessing that Pastor Love had come to her that very night and confessed everything. He told her in chilling detail how he had walked into Randy's office, aimed the gun, and fired the fatal shot. Desperate to solidify their case, investigators had Teresa place a call to David, hoping he might confess again. The call was recorded.
Yes.
This is Teresa.
Hi.
We need to talk.
Okay.
I want to know why. I want to know why.
Teresa, why what?
You know what?
David didn't confess over the phone, but the damage was done. Police had already pieced together enough evidence to implicate him. Surveillance footage showed a Ford Taurus driving in the area where the murder took place. Pastor Love had been using his son's Taurus after losing his driving privileges due to a DUI. His warning text message to Teresa and the location of his cell phone near the crime scene were the final nails in the coffin. With a search warrant in hand, investigators searched David Love's home and his church. Realizing the noose was tightening around him, Pastor Love fled Missouri and moved to South Carolina. David Love was arrested there after a Jackson County grand jury indicted him on charges of first-degree murder and armed criminal action. The former pastor's arrest marked the beginning of the end for a tangled web of lies and betrayal. Only hours after being placed behind bars, David made a phone call to his wife Kim. For years, the affair between David and Teresa Stone had been an open secret, one that Kim was all too aware of. Yet, despite her suspicions, she asked him over and over on that call, "Did you do it?" David, knowing full well that the conversation was being recorded, chose to remain silent. He never admitted to anything, but his silence spoke volumes. What Kim didn't know, however, was the full scope of the twisted plan she had narrowly escaped. In the weeks after Randy Stone's murder, Teresa had confided in a pastor in West Virginia, revealing a chilling detail that shocked even the investigators. Randy wasn't the only target. Teresa had confessed that David had also planned to kill his own wife, Kim. The plot involved David breaking her neck and staging her death as a car accident, rolling her down a hill to make it look like a tragic mishap. With their spouses gone, David and Teresa hoped to collect Randy's life insurance, clear David's debts, and start a new life together. Unfortunately, those plans never came to fruition. In November 2011, overwhelmed by the mountain of evidence against him, the 51-year-old pastor finally took a plea deal for second-degree murder. This allowed him to avoid a trial and in doing so, spared Randy's grieving family the additional pain of reliving the details in court. David Love's guilty plea brought a measure of closure, though for Randy's family, the emotional wounds would never fully heal. One family member shared her thoughts. He took accountability for what he did, and at least the family didn't have to suffer through a long trial. But the case was far from over. As David sat in prison, attention turned to Teresa Stone. She was now facing charges as a co-conspirator in her husband's murder. In the spring of 2012, Teresa, under the weight of the evidence and her own conscience, finally confessed to her role in the crime. But for Randy's family, especially his mother Clara, the confession was too little, too late. Teresa had been like family, and accepting her betrayal was a bitter pill to swallow.
I would have rather she'd filed for divorce. Even though I don't believe in divorce, but I'd rather do that. If you're that unhappy, divorce them.
She even added at the end, "He told me he would love her until the day he died, and I truly believe he did." Robert Davis, one of Randy's closest friends, said, "He worshipped Teresa. She was everything to him. No matter where we were, whether it was a work event or something social, he was always on the phone with her, or she'd be calling him. They were constantly in contact." In the end, Teresa pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder, a Class B felony that carried a potential sentence of 5 to 15 years in prison. For many of Randy's loved ones, this didn't seem like enough time for the woman who had taken a good man's life. During her sentencing hearing, the full extent of Teresa's involvement became clear. She admitted to telling David where Randy's gun was kept and how to access it. Their text messages, filled with discussions about Randy's guns and talk of taking care of things, with one shot to the head, were damning evidence. Despite everything, Teresa's children, Michael and Miranda, stood by their mother during the hearing. They tearfully pleaded for mercy, emphasizing how much they still needed her in their lives, especially after losing their father.
I ask you today to show mercy on my case. I will do anything I have to do to pay my debt, Your Honor.
In the end, Teresa was sentenced to 8 years in prison. David Love, the former pastor who had once been trusted and admired, received a life sentence with the possibility of parole in 2036. His wife Kim divorced him and has since remarried, saying she harbors no ill will towards her ex-husband or Teresa. She has moved on with her life. Teresa, after serving her sentence, was released from prison and is now reported to be living in the Kansas City area with a new partner. As for Randy Stone, his memory lives on as that of an honorable Marine, a devoted family man, and a loyal member of the New Hope Baptist Church. His untimely death remains a tragic reminder of the dark and destructive power of betrayal. But many people couldn't shake the feeling that Teresa didn't deserve such a light ending. While she served her time in prison, it didn't change the fact that she played a role in plotting her own husband's murder and showed little to no remorse afterward. Some even went so far as to suggest that she might have manipulated her children, making them believe that losing her was somehow more painful than losing their father. And then there's Pastor David Love, a man trusted by his community and admired by many, including Randy Stone. As a pastor, David was supposed to be a moral guide, a source of comfort. Instead, he betrayed that trust in the most horrifying way. Not only did he have an affair with Teresa, but he also conspired with her to take a man's life, a man who had once respected and looked up to him. It's a troubling thought, isn't it? But as we've often said on this channel, the people you think you know best aren't always who they seem. Sometimes, the kindest person in your life may be hiding the darkest secrets. If you want more videos like this, please be sure to like the video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on more true crime videos. Take care and see you in the next one.